even see the 2 copies of Ground Seal main deck. So this is very, very reminiscent of a deck list that we just saw lose in the finals earlier this morning. He's playing against Rodgers, playing Naya.
I don't think I'm going to be able to go through with this match. I just got my bunny ears stolen from me.
Oh boy.
And I want them back. But Jared is playing just stock Naya. He's got Mizzy Mortars over the Bonfires that I've wanted, but I still think they're very good in aggressive format, and they're very good in this matchup. But just very stock. He's got Absence Pilgrims, Locks and Smiters, Huntmasters, Thrag Tusks, Restoration Angels, 2 Thundermoths, 2 Zealous Conscripts with 1 Angel Serenity to curve it out, with 2 Selesnya Charms, which will be very good in this matchup.
So we do see both players that kept their 7 cards. You see that Nicholas has started off with an Overgrown Tomb into an Arbor Elf, a start that we saw John do a lot of over the course of the day yesterday. And he does just play a Forest and passes the turn back, as we see Jared is going to cast a Farseek.
Now, many times I like killing this Arbor Elf just to put Jund down a card for lands, because if Nicholas does have a red source, he's going to be able to go Huntmaster first, really slowing down Jared's draw. I would much rather kill it and then go search for a land. But, I mean, if Nicholas doesn't have a red source, then we're off to a good start.
And he, of course, does have 4 copies of Huntmaster for the Fells, 3 Olivia Voldarens as well, so a couple of things that he can play here on turn 3 if he does have a Stomping Ground or a Blood Crypt. We'll see what Nicholas does draw here as he finds a Ground Seal.
Yeah, I wouldn't put my opponent on having a Blood Crypt or Stomping Ground, since he did lead with that Overgrown Tomb into a Forest.
And you do see an attack here with the Arbor Elf. The Ground Seal did draw a card, but he did not have a 3rd land. You see his hand right now. He does have an Abrupticate, but he also has a couple copies of Huntmaster of the Fells and Olivia Voldaren. So having some mana trouble, something we saw John have an issue with in the finals earlier today.
All right, so now Jared's deciding between either going Farseek or Huntmaster, and I do like his play of killing that Arbor Elf since Nicholas is showing that he doesn't have any more mana sources, and curbing up on his red sources. Now we have 4 of them. We only need 3 for any more Mizzy Mortars, but we've got a lot of big creatures in his hand, so we're going to start playing Haymakers.
So the mana is online for Jared. He has stunted Nicholas's growth, taking care of that Arbor Elf via Mizzy Mortars. So Nicholas is going to have to draw running lands here to be able to do anything of consequences. He does draw a card. He draws another Huntmaster of the Fells. You see that handful of 4 drops. A little bit of frustration there, and does just pass the turn back with access to an Abrupticate. That's about it.
Did he have 8 cards?
No, just does have 7.
Okay.
So Jared going to attack here with a Thundermaw Hellkite.
That's dropping Nicholas down to 13.
Nicholas draws a card. He draws a Rakdos Return. And he is going to discard. He discards that Rakdos turn he draws for the turn. So Thundermaw Hellkite going to close this game out in short order. 5 more in the red zone by Nicholas. And now we're going to see a Thragtusk in the second main phase, and he is just going to pass the turn back after he does gain that 5 life. And we will probably see a concession after one more draw step here from Nick. As you see a Blood Crypt, Ground Seal, and those lands are going to go to his hand, and we are going to shuffle up for game number 2. Jared Rodgers wins game 1 with Naya.
All right, so what I really like out of the sideboard from Jared's side, if he does bring it in, is we have 1 Garruk Primal Hunter, which is pretty good in this matchup. We have a 2nd Angel Serenity, so if we ever draw both, it chains together. But there's 1 Assemble the Legions along with another Huntmaster. Now, I really like Planeswalkers and Permanents that produce creatures in this matchup. Jund has a tough time dealing with them since they're just mostly on spot removal, cards like Bonfire, and then they're big cards like Olivia. So if he wants to, he can bring in a Domre Rade to fill out the 1 in the main, along with a Garruk to fill out the 1 in the main, since he has 1 of each Planeswalker, with an Assemble the Legions and an Age of Serenity, and go a little bit over the top of Jund. And so what does Jund have to answer these cards?
So John, you see Acidic Slime here. He has 2 copies of those in his sideboard. He can't take care of those Assemble the Legion. The singleton Assemble the Legion that you do bring up. You also see 2 copies of Bonfire of the Damned. Of course, a great card in your mid-range mirrors. You see an additional copy of Mizzy Mortars that he can bring in here. You see a card like Rakdos Return. You see 2 Tragic Slips of Liana Veil. Definitely a lot of options here. I think the first thing to go for Nicholas's deck is those 2 Ground Seals. Not really going to be much use here. Yes, they do cantrip, but you'd rather just have good cards in those spots. And he just needs to make his deck, you know, a decent amount of removal along with some efficient creatures and just go that way. This is the kind of deck that Jund does want to get paired up against.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Jund's wheelhouse right here. Creature on creature matchups. They have better removal. They have better creatures. They have Olivia where you do not.
Oh, yes.
This is the kind of deck that I think Jund wants to play against, but you got to draw those lands to cast those spells.
Well, I would say that historically that's correct, but Jared has a lot of transitional spells to beat these Olivias. We have 3 Selesnya Charms for when they get out of hand. We have 4 Mortars to help when they're still just getting online. 2 Oblivion Rings as well. we can deal with the permanence from the Naya side. So if he transitions correctly and just goes to more of a, I'm just going to play mid-range with you, he has the permanence to deal with any onslaught. Jund is really going to want those Rakdos returns to get online very quickly.
Yeah. And you take a look here at Nicholas' deck list, he has 2 Rakdos return in his main and 1 of his sideboard, so does have access to those, and he's just going to, tidy up his deck a little bit. The thing about Jund is that, it tries to have a deck where it's 50-50 game 1 against everything, and they can kind of side out the garbage and side in the good stuff.
Yeah, Jund is, I think every single deck I've ever played, like, I feel so good game 1 against Jund, and I feel so bad after sideboard, and then when I played Jund-style decks like Pedal to the Metal, or I was playing a blue Snapcaster Jund deck, it got so good after sideboard. It was just always, I always felt favored in every matchup. It felt like I got unlucky to lose.
Yeah. And, it's able to sideboard out those cards that are mediocre to poor in these matchups, like your ground seals. Abrupt Decay is at its best in this matchup. Doesn't have really a Planeswalker to kill outside of the 1 Dami Rod. Can't obviously kill Garrett Primal Hunter, so you'll probably see those hit the bench. Tragic Slip isn't really at its best here either. Maybe those will bite the dust for much more high-impact cards like Bonfire of the Dam, like Museum Mortars, and like, as you said, the Rakdos Return.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how this game maps out. It was a little disappointing to see Nicholas just fall there. Especially in such a good game 1 against the build of Naya, and but we see that Jund, prevails all the time. So players both shuffling up.
Hey, no big deal to be down a game here with Jund. Obviously, Nick just didn't draw any lands that game. And, the Ground Seal, obviously not a card he wants to draw in that matchup, and just was stuck at the end of the game with a bunch of Huntmasters living in his hand. So nothing to panic about.
Yeah, he looks very relaxed, too.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm going to have to go look back at and compare what I look like in future matches to everyone else, because I think I'm very serious in my future matches.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree.
These guys look very, very happy all the time, and I'm just like, I need to win.
So you see Werner is going to be playing here. He is down a game, so he'll be on the plate. So he takes a look at his hand here. You see at least an Overgrown Tomb. See if we find any red source or anything. And we do see an Overgrown Tomb into an Arbor Elf. So he's found a hand that he's happy to keep, as has Rodgers. So game 2 is underway here in round 4 of our second standard open here in Orlando.
That seems like a lot of lands for Jared.
Now we are going to see a Farseek here for Nicholas. He's going to also play that Overgrown Tomb. We'll probably see him get a Blood Crypt, but it could be a Stomping Ground as well.
It's always Blood Crypt. Wow, it's not Blood Crypt.
Take that. Always Blood Crypt, man.
Should be Blood Crypt.
He wants himself a Stomping Ground.
I guess, no, it should be a Stomping Ground because we don't have a Stomping Ground before, and that gives double red for the Absence Pilgrim. Or, sorry, Arbor Elf.
And so Jared is going to draw a card here. You see a Sacred Foundry in his hand. You also see a Temple Garden as well. Actually does have a lot of lands there.
One thing I do see is a Smiter and a Liliana.
All right, well, here is a Farseek.
And I think he's Farseeking first, which I would have liked to do second because he does have a Mortars. But I think, nope, never mind. I didn't see a Liliana, I guess. I think he's just going to Edict. He's smart. He knows to not discard.
And so we are just going to see an attack here. Looks like with that Arbor Elf, looks like he's just going to pass the turn back after resolving this Farseek. And so Jared is going to go down to 19. He does just pass the turn back. So careful with that Liliana if he does have one in his hand. Does not want to activate that and make him discard Loxodon Smiter, as we are going to see Jared cast Loxodon Smiter and pass the turn back. Nicholas is going to untap. He's going to draw.
He's going.
Yeah. Well, we have a bit of a technical problem right now, so as soon as we do have that shirt up, as we are back here.
All right.
And now we do see a Rakdos Return, and that is going to be a big one, as that is going to be for 4.
All right. So one of the cards he's going to discard is going to be that Loxodon Smiter, which is going to hit play.
Yep.
And probably going to keep that Restoration Angel.
Looks like he's going to keep Restoration Angel and a land.
Yeah, I think that's good.
See the cards he's discarding. Put Loxodon Smiter into play. You see a Temple Guardian biting the dust. Looks like an Angel Shiny and an Avacyn's Pilgrim. So he wants to scan those over. He does see the cards that are discarded, and he does just pass the turn back. But now he's going to be beaten down by 8 points of damage and some angry elephants coming across.
Yeah, but Nicholas does have the answer in Museum Mortars in his hand. So because he went and got that Stomping Ground and out of Blood Crypt, he's able to cast it.
And you see him tap those lands very quickly, and you're going to see the Overload on Museum Mortars. 4 damage to each one of those Smiters. Those things got to get out of here. We do know that Jared does have a Restoration Angel in reserve, which he does cast on Nicholas's end step. He untaps, he draws, he sends in for 3. You see a Clifftop Retreat to go along with that Avacyn's Pilgrim, so he's kind of hoping that these guys are able to hold steady.
Yeah. All right, and most of the time, like for instance, Jared just kept a card in his hand that he could have played, and now I don't think there's a lot of reason to do that. Like your opponent's spells are so linear that they're going to cast them anyways, and you have cards like Kessig Wolfrun in your deck.
But now we do see Nicholas cast Dreadbore, that Restoration Angel, that takes care of that. Huntmaster of the Fells, Wolf Token, and 2 life. So Nicholas is beginning to stabilize here, and we've seen this many times with Jund on camera. Its cards are so powerful, it just needs the mana to be able to deploy them, and then it can just turn the corner and win a game very easily, as Arbor Elf is now coming across here with no fear, willing to trade with Absence Pilgrim if Jared wants to. As you do see, Jared does draw, exactly as you said, Kessig Wolfrun for the turn. That's why you need to play those lands out in your hand. A lot of people want to hold lands, Brad. They see a lot of people doing that, and it feels correct. And you see, as you see a Kessig Wolfrun activation here, take care of that wolf.
And it only dealt 1 damage now, and if it dealt the extra damage needed, he would have had a lethal Hellkite if it was off the top.
Yeah.
So if he did play that land, he would have had a better out.
So now we see Huntmaster of the Fells flip into Ravager of the Fells. There's no spell there for Jared. Nicholas, considering his options here, is you do see a Murder in his hand, a Stomping Ground. You know, do I want to leave Murder up? Do I just want to push all of this into a Kessig Wolfrun here and try to put you on a 2-turn clock?
I'm pretty sure you want to keep Murder up. It doesn't look like he's going to. But if he did keep Murder up, he plays around land in hand Aurelia.
Sure.
And that's something I would probably want to play against Naya. He does have the mana for it. Or he's missing 1 white or red.
And we do see a draw step here, and it is a Thragtusk there from Jared, so that'll buy him a little bit of time. Does play that Clifftop Retreat and does pass the turn back. I think he's realized his mistake from a turn ago.
It does not matter.
And what do we think we have here? What could this be?
I'm going to go with Bonfire of the Damned.
I feel like you are correct. You are from the future. Bonfire of the Damned Miracle. One of the best feelings in Magic. That is going to be looks to be for just 3 to kill the Thragtusk instead of...
No, it's for 4. Dropping him to
4,
5,
excuse me.
And then he's 1 mana short of murdering to kill his opponent. But I still think you want to cast a Murder to flip the Huntmaster.
Yeah. And so we are going to see the Ravager of the Fells come across here.
He's going to see if he's going to block or not to see if he has to use the Murder. If he blocks, then he has to Murder. If not, he can hold it. Depending on what Jared does, I do, like, no matter what, he's taking 4. And I think, like, you want to just see what your opponent does to, like, learn. But, he's just going to keep that Murder. I like flipping it because then what that does is it puts him at 1.
Then force him to have a spell for this turn.
Yeah.
As you do see, Celestial Charm is the draw this turn for Jared.
It's just not going to get the job done. I wouldn't even show him that Celestia Charm.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of card that you really don't want your opponent to know about it, as Nicholas does just draw a card. Here comes the Huntmaster of the Fells, or excuse me, the Ravager of the Fells. Here comes the Arbor Elf. And you see him contemplating casting the Celestia Charm.
For no reason.
And he is going to play it, so he's going to give Nicholas some free information that he has this card in his deck. And now, Nicholas, are you going to cast that Murder, let your opponent know you have that? Again, there's no reason to give away that information. And he points to the Kessig Wolfrun and says, yeah, you're dead.
Yeah,
that's all right, I am.
That is something I feel like I see on camera. For anyone at home that goes to these opens, if you find yourself on a camera match, you don't have to just do everything. And I see a lot of people do that. They, like, play out all of their spells and try to go until their last point of damage. But, like, that information is very good for Nicholas now, because you might see him, instead of killing off a 2/2 with an Olivia, he might just poke it and steal it just to play around that card now. Or protect his Olivia to just steal a big threat instead of start killing everything.
Maybe a little bit more cautious with the 2 Thunderbolt Hellkites that he has in his deck as well. You know, you never do know. Having that information with Celestia Charm, some sort of strange attacks that could happen now, you know, it doesn't have to worry about those.
Players just need 2 more people to launch a booster draft.
So we'll see what happens in Game 3 here between Nicholas Werner and Jared Rodgers. Jund versus Naya. I think, as you said, Jund might be a slight dog in Game 1 because it does have some kind of stinky cards that it can draw into. But after sideboard does solidify itself, boards out the stinkers for some real high-impact players. And we saw Nicholas drew nothing but good cards that game because he has nothing but good cards in his deck.
Yeah, that's the best thing about Jund. It's a little clunky. Some of his draws aren't that smooth, but when it's operational, it is the best deck after sideboard against any matchup.
Yeah. And we certainly saw it in that game. We'll see if we can see it in Game 3 here. Jared Rodgers going to be able to play for Game 3. What is he looking for in this Game 3 to kind of try to turn this matchup around?
Well, I think the biggest thing is an Absence Pilgrim into a Planeswalker, or to be the first Huntmaster on the board.
Okay.
I think both of those are like your goals. Domri Radi is very good against Jund. It lets you like not only net cards, but kill off early Arbor Elves.
Sure.
As well as maybe the just Smiter into Thunder Madra is a very good one as well. Just getting on the board faster. You either want your permanents to be dealing damage immediately, or to be able to be Planeswalkers to get incremental advantage. Jund does have a lot of 1-for-1s, as we say. The one card that they get a lot of value out of is their Rakdos returns.
Yep.
So if you can get underneath the Rakdos return and not lose many cards to it, as well as putting permanents on the board that'll generate card advantage or virtual card advantage on the board, that's exactly what Nai's going to want to do. Also, a turn 3 Assemble Legion would not be too shabby.
Yeah, that would not be so bad at all. And we saw your point about Rakdos return, a card that he does have 2 of in the main deck and 1 of in the sideboard, does Nicholas, is that that Rakdos return was, a bit of a nail biter there. It did put a Lost Spider into play, but it did its job and knocked out some cards in Jared's hand, dealt him some damage, and then Mizzy Mortars kind of cleaned up what was left behind, and then the game just turned on a dime. So Rakdos return, even though there are Spiders in the deck, you still have to leave them in, as they are a huge card in this matchup.
And that's one of the things that I dislike the Nai decks doing, is playing the 7-drop in Angel Serenity. Now, you think that's a good card, and you think of those games where it comes down to an Angel Serenity winning, but usually those are only the games where they're top decks, where you will have both played a lot of lands, you're both attrition, and those games don't happen all the time. It's very difficult to actually interact with a deck like Jund for 7 turns before you get to that Angel Serenity.
Yeah.
Without them Rakdos returning it, or them just beating you down, because you had to have 7 lands and an Angel Serenity. That's 8 permanents out of what, 14, 15 cards. So in there, those other cards had to be high impact enough. Not any more lands, any less lands. So I like taking those kind of cards out, focusing on 3, 4, and 5 drops in this matchup, and making sure that I can get under a Rakdos return and I can get on the board quick enough, and not get stuck with these cards in my hand when my opponent does in fact Rakdos return me.
Yeah, one thing a lot of people do see, and we've seen over the course of the past 3 weekends here, the Star City Games Open Series, is just how dominant Angel Serenity has been, but you see it from Junk Reanimator decks, and you see how good it is from those decks, but sometimes you fail to realize that it's so good there because A, they're able to find it with Grizzly Salvage, B, they're able to return it with Unburial Rights, or C, they can cast it ahead of schedule. With this deck, it coming from an Naya deck, it's a little bit different, it's a little bit slower, it's not as game-winning as it is from your Junk Reanimator deck, so even though it's the same card, it coming from a different deck makes it a completely different card.
I think any deck that's playing early acceleration should treat 7 and 8 drops as cheat spells, kind of like they do in Reanimator decks in like Legacy, where it's just 1 and 2 drops, 7 and 8 drops that you go into, like Gristlebrand's. Those cards are very difficult to cast in such an aggressive format where there isn't a lot of card advantage. You're not casting cards like Urban Evolution or Tidings, things like that you would need to be able to hit the land drops and hit enough spells to get there without like just bleeding from just not doing enough.
Yeah, that's just not the format that we are in, as Jared is going to be taking a mulligan here. Nicholas looks like he is in the tank, not sure if he does want to keep, but it looks like he may be happy with his 7.
Or just very excited that his opponent's mulliganing.
Yeah, either one.
I get a little stressful and I'm just like, all right, that's great. Now can we just go to 5? Just one time?
Always wishing for the worst for your opponent.
Yeah. They're doing the same to me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think it's after how many times that I've mulled to 5 and not done anything, and at the end of the game when I like was just trying to stay in it for no reason, my opponent like at the end is just like, that was such a good game. Oh man. I'm like, I played a bear.
Jaded brand. As we do see Jared taking a look at his 6 cards, so you see at least a Rootbound Crag there, and a Sacred Foundry as well, so he does have a couple of lands. As Nicholas is going to draw a card here, play a Dragon Skull Summon, and just pass the turn back.
Yeah, I do see a Farseek as well, so I don't know what those spells are in his hand, but hopefully one of them is red as well as white.
A little bit of acceleration here from Jared, so he's going to be able to fix the mana base while accelerating himself. There is also a Cavern of Souls in his hand as well, so he is certainly ahead of Nicholas and his Jund deck right now. We'll see if Nicholas is able to catch back up with his own Farseek here on turn 2.
Yeah, well, it only will matter if Jared starts playing spells, and when you're down a card against a deck like Jund where he's trying to re-kill everything, it's more detrimental than you think. It's actually you're down 2 cards, because the game will slow down because of what Jund does to you.
And we do see Nicholas does draw a card, and he does just play a Kessel Wolfrun.
And that is important. He is playing a Kessel Wolfrun and not a green source,
yes.
so...
And now you do see an Avacyn's Pilgrim here from Jared. You
And
see
a
a
Smiter.
Loxodon Smiter. The last two cards in his hand are a Cavern Souls and a Zealous Conscripts. Tragic Slip is going to take care of that Avacyn's Pilgrim. Nicholas draws a card. It's a Liliana of the Veil.
We have
and
Mizzium
Mizzium
Mortars.
will take care of that Smiter. So he's doing okay, but he needs to draw a green source. He needs to draw one right now, as you see Avacyn's Pilgrim, the draw for Jared this turn. And we'll get confirmation on what that Cavern of Souls is naming from our spotter. They're likely to be human. It could be an angel as well, though.
So he did draw the land to go with it. And here's the Farseek. But Jared just has a Zealous Conscript. I kind of like just casting and starting the beats. Like if your opponent misses a couple times, that's 9 damage.
Yeah, that's true.
And that would have been total of 6, a little bit more than that Avacyn's Pilgrim. Plus he doesn't have any 6-drops in his deck. And he's a little bit behind, so I like playing that Zealous Conscripts. Maybe if you top deck a Garrick, your opponent doesn't have a Planeswalker in play, doesn't have a permanent. I don't know what that Zealous Conscript is going to steal. It's not even like a card that I really like in this matchup. So just get the haste and get the beats in.
Yeah, it's easy to want to hold that Zealous Conscripts for a blowout because that's what that card normally does. As we see attack here with Avacyn's Pilgrim, we're going to see a second Avacyn's Pilgrim join the battlefield here. But again, this is still a 3/3 haste creature that can get some points of damage in. And I think I smell a Bonfire of the Damned here.
I see a Bonfire, but I think he might, like, I could see why you wouldn't want to do it because there are only 2 Pilgrims, and you can get that last card with a Liliana and get that into play. Like, all right.
We do see Jared just pass the turn back here. Draws a Restoration Angel for the turn. Definitely playing a little bit too conservatively with that Zealous Conscripts. Just trying to make it be the ultimate blowout here. And Restoration Angel actually allows it to be, even more of a blowout. Yeah, but we're going to see Restoration Angel here in the end step. Jared does draw a Rootbound Crag to go along with that Zealous Conscript, so he'll be able to do some damage in the air right now. But Huntmaster of the Hells is threatening to flip.
All right, so he just really wants to try to use this in a different way. And now he knows, I think he forgot that it was going to flip. Now it flips, but playing in its second main phase is not as powerful as first.
Certainly not. So you're going to see Ravager of the Fellows join the party. 2 damage to Jared, 2 damage on that Restoration Angel. We see a Forest drawn for the turn here by Nicholas. You see a Liliana of the Veil at the front of his hand among other cards, and the Wolf token and the Ravager will come across here for 6 points of damage. Going to knock Jared down to 11. And let's see what his follow-up play is going to be.
I think we're going to see a Liliana Edict.
And that's exactly what we do see. Liliana Edict does take care of that there, and we are going to follow that up with a Arbor Elf and pass the turn back. So it looks like Nicholas has turned that corner as Ravager of the Fells is going to flip back the Huntmaster, and we are going to get 2 life and a Wolf token over there for the Jund player.
Now, I don't think that this Zealous Conscript was going to win the game, because that Miracle Bonfire was going to kill it eventually.
Absolutely.
Anyway. But this is just a good lesson in Magic is, yes, you have this card that is for this amazing situation, but that's not how Magic's played. Sometimes you just have to fight in the mud and just get there with whatever you can, and you have to be more flexible with the spells that you're having in your deck. So just putting that into play and attacking might not be the greatest thing. It's surely not as good as a Thundermahawk guy, but you got to do what you got to do.
Trying to hold that 5-mana 3/3 Zealous Conscripts for the perfect situation where, the perfect situation might actually just be being a 5-mana 3/3 haster.
Especially when your opponent is just stuck on a black-red source and a wolf run when there's no green source. So,
and now you do see Jared extends the hand. So Nicholas Werner, after a little bit of mana issues, does come back, draws an Overgrown Tomb so he can Farseek, fix his mana, develop it, and then get a Huntmaster of the Fells in play, and that pretty much took over the game. So congratulations to Nicholas. Jund does win on camera again, as it is aching to do.
I mean, I liked Nicholas's lines. He seems like a very good Magic player. Sporting a shirt that is, I'm familiar with in Florida.
Yes, the Game Academy, a local store I was hanging out at on Friday. Big F&M over there. I think they had about 36, 38 people on Friday.
Lucky you were hanging out with people. I was testing for the invitation.
Hey, you guys